Voting Theory Class 10 Video 4. In this video we're just going to do an example involving fairness principles. So let's look at the example. So it's a word question, okay, and the question reads, suppose there are three alternatives, A, B and C, are running in an election with 100 voters. The exact voting system used in the election is a secret, so you don't know what the voting system is. All you know is that it's an ordinal voting system. Okay, so it can be any voting system. It doesn't even need to be one of the ones that we've spoke about. It could be something we haven't spoke about yet. It could be any voting system. After visiting a local fortune teller, you learn that if you were to vote A, B, C, then the election results would be C, A, B. So if you vote A, B, C, the election results are C, A, B. And if you vote B, C, A, then the election results will be ACB. This is what the fortune teller tells you, okay? And obviously, because the fortune teller is predicting the future, it's assumed that no one else is changing their votes. So in both of these scenarios, all the other 99 voters, they are unchanged. They don't change their votes. The only thing that changes is you. You can vote ABC, and then the outcome will be CAB. Or you could vote BCA and the outcome would be ACB. But everyone else is unchanged. Okay? Based on this information alone, which of the following fairness principles does this mystery voting system satisfy? And if you don't have enough information to completely determine whether this voting system satisfies them, just say not enough information. Okay? So how about this first one? The first one says no dictator. So the question is, does this mystery voting system have a dictator? Well, there are sort of like two options for the dictator. Either you could be a dictator or another voter could be a dictator. Okay? If there is a dictator, it has to be you or someone else. Well, are you a dictator? If you were the dictator, then whatever you say would be the outcome of the election. But you say ABC and the outcome is not ABC. So that means you are not the dictator, okay? Because it's not true that you completely decide the outcome of the election. Well, is someone else a dictator? Well, if someone else was the dictator, it wouldn't matter what you did, right? If one of the other voters was a dictator, it makes no difference how you vote. But how you vote does actually change the outcome, right? If you vote ABC, the outcome is CAB. And if you vote BCA, the outcome is different. It's ACB. So your vote does have an influence in some way on the outcome of the election. So that means no one else is a dictator either. So there is no dictator. So yes, this voting system satisfies the no dictator fairness principle. Okay? How about number 2, egalitarian? Is this voting system egalitarian? So remember, egalitarian means that all the voters are treated equally. Well, there's simply not enough information to conclude this. We have no idea how this voting system works, right? We don't know if everyone is treated fairly or if some people's votes are worth more than other votes. All we know is this tiny snapshot of information. So we simply do not have enough information to conclude whether it is or is not egalitarian. Okay? Number 3, unanimity. So if you recall, unanimity is the fairness principle which says that if every single voter votes in exactly the same way, then that's the outcome of the election. Well, we just don't know how other people are voting in this example. You know, there's 100 voters, and I have no idea how the other 99 of them are going to vote. So we can't really test whether it's unanimous, because we don't know if there's like a unanimous consensus. So we can't test if it's unanimous. So again, not enough information. Not enough info. Okay, number 4. Is it monotone? So these are starting to get trickier now. Remember, monotone means increasing support should never harm an alternative, and decreasing support should never help an alternative. So let's test this. If we compare these two situations, right? Think about what happens to alternative A. So A, there's a decrease in support for A as you go from the top situation to the bottom situation. You go from ranking A in top place to ranking A in last place. But what happens to the outcome of the election? Well, A goes from second place to first place. So decreasing support for A actually increased A's overall ranking. Okay, decreasing support for A made A do better in the overall ranking, which means that this is a violation of the monotone criteria. So no, it is not monotone. Okay, and we found this A example demonstrates that it's not monotone. Lastly, IIA, the independence of irrelevant alternatives. So for this one, we need to find two alternatives where your relative preference is unchanged, but the societal preference is changed. Okay. So we just need to start comparing some pairs of alternatives. So if we look at A and B, well, originally you think A is better than B, but then you think B is better than A. So your relative preference for A and B is not consistent. You change from A is better than B to B is better than A. So that means we can't use A and B to test whether this satisfies IIA. What about A and C? So originally you think A is better than C, and then you think C is better than A. So you can't use A and C to test whether this satisfies IIA either. You need it so that it's consistent. So like in both cases, you would think A is better than C. Finally, let's think about B and C. So originally you think B is better than C, and then in the second scenario, you still think B is better than C. So we can use B and C to test. So if we go over to the results, in the first scenario, C is ranked higher than B. And in the second scenario, C is also ranked higher than B. Okay. So what does this mean? This means that it is not a contradiction to IIA, but that in itself does not prove that it has IIA. This just means like we don't have any evidence that it does not have IIA, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it does have IIA. There's just a lack of evidence against it. So what's the answer to IIA? Just not enough information. Not enough information. Okay. If instead of this, the social ranking was like this. Okay, so in a hypothetical world, if I change the social ranking in the second scenario to this, then we conclude that originally B is better than C, originally B is better than C, the social ranking put C better than B, but then here it sort of swaps direction. Okay, so I could write it like this. Okay, like the social ranking puts C better than B originally, and then after in scenario 2 it swaps to B better than C, even though your preference for B and C remains unchanged. So in this, the red scenario, you would conclude no, it does not have IIA in the red scenario. Okay, but in the original scenario there's just not enough information. Okay, that's the end of this example, and that's the end of this video.